Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering to discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions of the thing. Today, joining me, we have Logan Wilkinson. How you doing, Logan?
Doing good.
Excellent, excellent. And we're going to be talking today about Zootopia Plus. It's a series of Zootopia shorts that launched late last year. It's been kind of on our radar to dive into these, but
That's true.
obviously we had all
like
of
November.
yeah. We had obviously our holiday month, so and then. It was one of the things that we threw in there as like a possibility for like the end of the holiday month, and then you were like, "No, let's do National Treasure," and I was like, "All right, well, let's do this National Treasure show instead." We are circling back here. So we're going to be talking about all 6 episodes of Zootopia Plus. That is Hop on Board, The Real Rodents of Little Rodentia, Duke the Musical, The Godfather of the Bride, So You Think You Can Prance, and Dinner Rush. I did not update the why did we pick it, but we kind of went over that. It's been on our radar. I think both of us are fans of Zootopia.
Oh yeah,
so this was a cool little thing. I in particular for me also, I was curious after I thought the Baymax series spin-off kind of from Big Hero 6 was done really well. So I was very curious to see how this similar idea was executed. So. Yes, it was originally released. All 6 episodes were originally released November 9th of 2022. And as we occasionally do on projects like this one, we'll also highlight that the original Zootopia was released March 4th, 2016. And rather than look at what else came out alongside Zootopia Plus, I thought, hey, let's look at the other things that came out around the time of Zootopia, which I know we've talked about at least one of these a few times. But we had Kung Fu Panda 3, came out January 29th there in 2016. Then we had on the same day, Deadpool and one of Logan's biggest disappointments ever, Zoolander 2, came out February 12th.
Took the words right out of my mouth, yeah.
Yep. Then on March 4th, in addition to the Zootopia launch, we also had London Has Fallen with Jared Butler. Then a week later, on March 11th, we had 10 Cloverfield Lane, that Cloverfield universe being spun out a little bit. March 25th brought us Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. And that's as far as I pulled up for for this series. Each of these episodes has a runtime of about 10-ish minutes, and a good 2 minutes of that is probably credits at the end. So,
or the beginning, the opening credits are also like 30 seconds to a minute long.
True. In the Disney Plus Shorts timeline of things, we had Baymax in June 29th of 2022, followed by I Am Groot, came out August 10th of last year. Then we had Cars on the Road, September 8th. Tales of the Jedi, which we've already done an episode on, October 26th. Zootopia Plus here a couple weeks later on November 9th. And it is, to date, the latest of these. We'll see if they continue doing a little bit of these kinds of little shorts, miniseries inspired on their other properties. But so far, it is all TBD. Our roll call. We have a duo of directors on this one. Trent Corey, who prior to this had directed the Frozen spinoff Once Upon a Snowman, featuring Olaf. And Josie Trinidad in her directorial debut. They also both served as writers on the project on all 6 episodes. In addition to having written Once Upon a Snowman, Trent Corey also wrote At Home with Olaf because they milk Frozen as much as they can and have done quite a few Frozen-y things. Josie Trinidad, prior to this, had written on the original Zootopia, as well as Ralph Breaks the Internet. And Michael Herrera also wrote on all 6 episodes in his writing debut. I believe he's predominantly an animator for Disney Animation Studios. Our cast of characters in an anthology series like this, we got a whole bunch of people who pretty much show up for an episode. So we'll just kind of run them down kind of in more or less chronological order. We have in that first one, Hop on Board or whatever, Hops on Board, I think. Bonnie Hunt reprising her role as Bonnie Hops. having been in projects like Beethoven, Jumanji, Cheaper by the Dozen, and then she's been prominent in the Cars universe of Pixar films, as well as various other Pixar stuff as well, and the Bonnie Hunt Show. And serving as her hubby, we have Don Lake as Stu Hops, who is one of those like perennial character actors, probably best known to people from his various roles in the Christopher Guest verse. So projects like Waiting for Guffman and all those kinds of films, Best in Show, that kind of stuff. And Jennifer Godwin reprises her role as Judy Hopps, very briefly. I think it's probably largely like reused audio, because definitely in the intro sequence, it's pretty much just a recreation or replay of a scene from the film, but she's credited, so give her some credit there. She's also been a perennial character in the series Once Upon a Time. Mm-hmm. Moving on into the Real House Rats of Rodentia, or whatever it's called. Real Rodents of Little Rodentia. We had Leah Latham reprising her role as Frou Frou. She's predominantly a production coordinator and supervisor on various Disney projects, including Wreck-It Ralph, Frozen, Moana, Raya, and Encanto. But she did also play Frou Frou in the original Zootopia. In the next one, we have Alan Tudyk, of course, reprising his role as Duke Weaselton. He's been in all of the things. He's just the all of the things kind of person these days. In the Star Wars verse, he's K2SO. Of course, you put him into Dodgeball as Steve the Pirate, iRobot, Firefly and Serenity, all that stuff. We have Maurice LaMarche as Mr. Big, reprising his role as well. He's probably also best known to audiences as the Brain from Animaniacs, as well as Futurama. He plays Morbo and Calculon and a number of other characters in Futurama, and literally 400 plus other credits on IMDb. He's one of those perennial voice performers. Nate Torrance as Clawhauser, reprising his role. Best known for me is always Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, which shout out, of course, to as the Aaron Sorkinisms of him. Idris Elba reprises his role as Chief Bogo, having also, of course, been in projects like The Wire, Luther, the MCU, Hobbs and Shaw. He was in Cats, and most recently Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Well, I guess most recently he was in some other stuff, but most recently that I've seen him
that
in,
we care about,
Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Well, he was in the what was it? Is it Frank Miller? No, was it Frank Miller? The guy who did the Mad Max movies had like his follow-up movie recently. That was just a big box office bomb, but Idris Elba was in it. So, yeah. Shakira reprises her role as Gazelle. Of course, Shakira, the music superstar. Charlotte McDowell plays Sam in the Rush Hour episode. She's probably best known to audiences from her role in Mythic Quest over on Apple Plus. But she was also actor Sif in Thor Ragnarok. So basically she was up there alongside Sam Neill and Matt Damon in the actors troupe. Yeah.
It is George Miller.
George Miller, not Frank. Frank Miller's Sin City and stuff like that. George Miller, thank you. Raymond S. Percy reprises his role as Flash, having also been in projects like Wreck-It Ralph. He is also predominantly an animator and director, but as sometimes happens with Disney, did a voice for a character and as like a temp track, and they liked him and kept him. Joining him in this as his paramour, Priscilla, we have Kristen Bell, best known from projects like Veronica Mars, as well as, of course, Anna in Frozen. And she is a noted and notable sloth lover, so I imagine she was just over the moon getting to play a sloth in this.
Also doing like an Australian accent.
No, she was the other sloth. The otter is the Australian. That was Charlotte Nickdell.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, that was because I had to like double catch that as well. But no, yeah, she was the female sloth. That gets proposed to.
It's going very slow.
Okay. Yeah. And he's not actually credited on IMDb, but I'll throw him in there as we have Jason Bateman as Nick Wilde, who again is basically just reused it from the after credits scene from Zootopia. But Jason Bateman, of course, from projects like Silver Spoons, Valerie, Arrested Development, and Ozark. And then also just because this was one that like I was like, that's interesting. That's an interesting name to see in here. As often these things do, there's a whole bunch of people who are like doing just additional voices throughout the thing. One of which was Joey Lawrence, who's he is listed
Shout out to
as
the 90s, man.
Additional voice talent in 4 of the episodes here. Yes, Joey Lawrence of Blossom fame or Brotherly Love or Melissa and Joey, depending on basically what era of Joey Lawrence sitcom show you got. So yeah, that was the last one I wanted to highlight there. A little bit of trivia, not a ton on this one, but this is the one that's in here. This is the first Walt Disney Animation Studio series to have the new animation software Presto, if that matters to animation gurus.
If anyone cares.
Yeah. IMDb had very slim pickings here. This is the second Walt Disney Animated Studios television series, in air quotes, after Baymax. The character Duke Weaselton, voiced by Alan Tudyk, is also, as was highlighted in both Frozen and in the original Zootopia. Alan Tudyk also voices the Duke of Weselton in Disney's Frozen, so it's very much just Disney having fun with those two Alan Tudyk character names. And then the last one that is in the IMDb trivia, but I didn't like even put it in the doc here, was because it was listed as like spoiler. This is Jason Bateman's like first Disney animated series or something like that. I'm like, again, I don't think you can really count him as being in this when they just reuse literally one line of his from the original movie. But and I guess I'll at least highlight it here because it was one of those things like that dawned on me after is this series is obviously like filling in lots of blanks or whatever. It's kind of like it's showing other things that are happening during the events of Zootopia, and it is in chronological order over the 6 episodes. So that is a little bit of a like extra little trivia tidbit. So what did you think, Logan? What did you think of these? Were there any standouts? Were there any that you were like, didn't need, that was a big old waste? Or just overall general thoughts?
Yeah, I think The Godfather of the Bride is great.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one's really well done and is like a really good, 9-minute, 10-minute long reenactment, or reimagining of like core elements from The Godfather Part 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's featuring, characters that were some of my favorite bits from the first movie anyway. And they just found more ways to get more Godfather references into the movie, which is always great. I love. That easily is the strongest episode of the 6 for me.
Mm-hmm.
I would say after that, I think the weakest episode is Duke the Musical for sure for me.
Okay.
Just didn't. I mean, maybe that's not true because I also didn't like the first one very much. The Hop on Board.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the 2 weakest episodes for me, I would say. And then Godfather of the Bride and Dinner Rush will be my 2 strongest. And then So You Think You Can Prance and The Real Rodents of Little Rodentia are kind of the like 3rd and 4th tier options. If I had to like break it into 3. So in terms of like the weak stuff, like Hop on Board and Duke the Musical, it just didn't work for me. Like it felt pretty flat. I mean, Hop on Board doesn't help the fact that like in a thing that is only 9 minutes long, of which 2.5 minutes of it are credits, and then the next minute and a half is something that we've already seen from the first movie. It's like there's not a lot of new stuff happening here in this episode, and I don't think I particularly love her like family as like a thing, right? Like, because they're basically like a one joke punchline, and I don't need it over. Like the funniest part of her family to me is always the fact that they're like a million kids. But like I really don't like the dad very much. I think like he's too bumbly idiot like farmer dad for me. It doesn't really work. Right, exactly. Thank you. Right. Bonnie Hunt's great because Bonnie Hunt is great. But the rest don't really work. And I did at least get one good laugh, which was like, you know, them telling like the grandpa to watch the kids and him being like, I'm not going to change any diapers, is like a kid is biting onto his arm. I enjoyed that. But otherwise the like train chase sequence and her like hot wire in the car to chase after them, it was all fine. I didn't really care for any of that.
Yeah, that one. It was an interesting way to start this series, I would say.
Agree.
Of like, okay, I mean, it's all just a wild, like, we're going to just do a crazy car chase. And like, just every element of it is believable. Like, how does the car stay caught up with a train over and over again throughout? Like, and if that was the case, why did Judy even take a train? Like, why didn't they just drive her into town in the first place? And then, yeah, like it especially like once they get there, the beat is incredibly predictable of like, all right, they're having this very long, you know, cute little like lovey-dovey moment. Of course, the baby's going to get back on the train and start heading back the other way. And sure enough, that's exactly what happens. It also does this interesting thing of, because they immediately are like setting up this idea of like, here's what was happening while the rest of the movie was happening. It's like, that would definitely have been a thing that Judy and her parents discussed at some point, like as close knit as she was with her family. And I'm pretty sure like in the movie, you see her like, you know, having calls with her folks, you know, as she's getting dejected and stuff like that. So it absolutely would have been a topic of conversation of, hey, by the way, like, like as soon as you left, we had this whole crazy adventure. Ha ha ha. So yeah, that was just a weird, dumb thing. And yeah, it like every joke that it tried to go for, I feel like it tried to go for a couple times, and like it didn't really work the first time. So the second beat also doesn't really do a ton for me. Like in particular, like you talking about the dad, like the dad kept being like, oh, my stupid sweaty thumbs or whatever. It's like, yeah, all right. I did like the, you know, Deary, do this or whatever. And, you know, the Siri take on whatever. And then it just plays music. Like that was a dumb little bit. But yeah, it was an odd beat to start on. I'll say, moving on into Real Runs of Little Rodentia, that was one that was one of the standouts for me, especially like especially I think coming off of that first one, I was like, okay, this is an interesting idea, playing with this like Real Housewives of New Jersey kind of format or whatever, and doing that whole thing, taking this, you know, fun little side character that we had in the movie, and then kind of giving us this extra view into her little entourage and her little family woes and stuff like that. I thought, oh, this is an interesting little, here's how you can tell stories and kind of like shake up the format and stuff like that. So, so that was one that worked for me. And I just had a good time.
I totally get that.
And then I think it's, I mean, just based on kind of your initial rundown, we probably differ the most on Duke the Musical. Yeah, I definitely didn't think it was like the highlight, but I enjoyed it. I had fun with it, and just the like just the audacity of a silly little musical number of this, you know, good for nothing kind of down on his luck crook, thinking like how he's going to turn his life around, and it's still like he's going to be a shifty used car salesman or a shifty lawyer or a shifty doctor or something. Like he's still going to be a bad guy, but he's going to do it with, you know, more renown or more repute or more whatever. So I enjoyed that. And then just the end of like it's another thing that was telegraphed of him very slowly crossing the street to give the money to the goat. It was like, okay, is he going to get hit by a car, or is the goat going to get hit by a car?
See, it's so funny you say that though, because when he was doing the like slow motion handhold, what I was thinking was like at the last second he's gonna snap back and be like, oh no, like I'm a bad guy, I'm gonna take off and run. So I actually didn't expect the car. I expected him to like bolt with the money kind of thing. I was just waiting for him to run away and be like, nope, I'm bad. Dun-dun-dun-sh.
Yeah.
And instead, he just gets fucking plowed by a truck, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I didn't expect that to happen."
Yeah,
so it actually did catch me off guard.
Yeah, and then I like the goat just being like, "It's just a scratch" or whatever.
Yeah, I'm okay.
So it was probably in like the top half of the ones I enjoyed. But I very much agree with you. I think The Godfather, The Bride is the standout of these
so
six.
Good.
And I think also in what I saw, I think also Maurice LaMarche, I think, got nominated for an Annie for it, an animation voice role. And yeah, it's I mean, as somebody who has enjoyed Maurice LaMarche for most of my life, be it from, going all the way back to Pinky and the Brain, Animaniacs and stuff like that, or especially the Futurama stuff, it's always fun seeing him pop up in things. And I don't think I realized watching Zootopia originally that he was Mr. Big. So seeing that here and knowing going into it that it was him was a lot of fun. And because he one of the most iconic voices that he does is not Oliver Stone. I always forget the guy who did Orson Welles. He does it like he always does like an Orson Welles kind of character. And so instead, and the second most prominent voice he probably does is a Brando. So getting to see him just kind of like do that entirely for this, and yeah, it was a fun. I think it also is the most interesting just in terms of like the Zootopian like Animal City lore and world building that it does of like, oh, little Rodentia didn't exist until he and his like mob buddies kind of built it up.
Made it, right.
That's cool. That's a like it and it's kind of like reintroduced in like the first one of like there's basically like three tiers. There's your big animals, then your smaller size animals like your rabbits and stuff, and then there's like your little itty bitty ones like the shrews and the mice and stuff like that. And so like just seeing that this character is essentially responsible for like an entire populace of Zootopia was a cool little beat. And yeah, I think just also has the most fun in terms of like the animation and playing with like the scale of things, like from the like the initial like getting on the boat and crossing and then you zoom out and you just see it's a tire going across a little puddle.
Right, yeah.
That then later is like resolved by a polar bear picking up the tire and just walking it across. I also love that it sets up the relationship between the shrews and the polar bears that was there in the movie and stuff. It's just like a lot of fun world building in that one that easily makes it I think the strong standout.
I think it's
you go ahead.
I was just gonna say I think it's just like such a smart episode on like so many layers, right? Like I think obviously if you are a kid who watched Zootopia or watches this, like you're gonna miss almost all of the Godfather references, but like they're so good and some of them are really deep pulls, and the fact that they're pulling from like not just Godfather Part 1 but like all of the backstory stuff is all of like the Robert De Niro young Vito Corleone stuff from Godfather Part 2, and it's great, and the sepia toned like nature of it, right? And that being basically what Vito did in Godfather Part 2, right? Like he's the Godfather in Part 1, which is where he is kind of at the beginning of the movie at his daughter's wedding. But like Part 2 kind of delves into the fact that like they basically made Little Italy in New York City because there wasn't a spot for Italians at the time, right? Or for rats here, and them like tracing that arc and like kind of get into like sort of the complicated nature of like this jokey character who's in the movie for like 10 minutes is like really kind of brilliant of like just like Don Vito's like not a bad guy necessarily. He's a complicated dude who does a lot of bad shit, but also like provides a home and supports people and does all this kind of stuff. So does Mr. Big. And yeah, I think it's like super smart and like really well layered. And I think visually it's the most interesting one. And I think like this is, I guess, like a weird thing to say for a 10-minute episode, but like thematically, it's like easily the strongest like through line of like there's a like thing being told to you here. And yeah, also in terms of like the lore, both in terms of that part of the city, in terms of like the relationships between characters that you're going to see later on in the film. Like there's a lot of payoff in that episode. And also his Don Corleone impression is like really legit. Like it's a really, like as someone who like loves The Godfather, like that's a great Brando impression. Like I said, like that's a really great Brando impression. And like a Brando impression that like is easily parodiable, but like hard to like actually do well kind of thing. And he absolutely crushed it. Just like a great impersonation of Vito Corleone.
Yeah, it's one of the things I think that Maurice LaMarche is like just really good at in those kinds of things is he never has to say the like iconic lines.
Yeah.
For you to still be able to hear him saying the iconic
Instantly.
lines. Like there isn't like I made him an offer he couldn't refuse kind of thing in here, but you could still like it's the kind of thing like maybe he says that before the mic starts recording to like help get into
character.
But yeah, it's he's able to do it. Like so much of like, you know, I don't watch TikTok, but I see enough TikTok,
Yeah.
you know, impressions videos or whatever kind of like make their way, and it'll always be like people doing, you know, the most famous line of a character, and that's like a really easy thing to just kind of mimic, but to like live in the voice like he does is a much harder kind of thing, and to not have the reference of the exact thing that you're going to say, the exact lines you're going to say is always tougher. So yeah, shout out to that one.
I think about, there's like on one of the channels of like magazines, like Vanity Fair, Variety, someone like that has like a speech, like language expert who like would break down like how good accents are and impression people are and like what makes good and bad ones work. And he did a whole one about like people doing like living people and not just like regional accents kind of one. And he went into like, obviously for comedic, you know, parodies or impersonations, you're just taking an aspect of how they speak and like turning it up to 11. And especially for like a lot of Brando, Godfather like impressions, that's what you're doing. And yeah, like the way you phrase it, I really love. Like he lives in that character so well, right? And it also helps that, you know, they somehow took Marlon Brando as the Godfather, which is like such a like larger than life, like physically impressive person, and distilled that into a tiny mouse, but like made that mouse look just like Marlon Brando, like the way like the eyes are drooped in the cheeks and like you can't see his eyes completely covered. Like it's just brilliant. Like it's like a really great combination of like, this shouldn't work at all, and it works so well both in terms of like visually what you were looking at and also what you're hearing. And yeah, they're just a level of like lived in character, and that I think is like so well done.
Indeed. Then we get into So You Think You Can Prance, and this is one like it was fine-ish.
I agree.
It was another one that was kind of predictable of like, all right, you know that Chief Bogo is going to ultimately like come and help him in the end. And I think a lot of the humor, much like in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, for example, I think a lot of the humor here is mined from Idris Elba being the character and being this, you know, very uptight kind of thing. And so to see him go into it and like get fully embrace the dancey thing, even if it's just in a dream, is a lot of fun because it's so against the type of the character kind of thing. And then we get the fun little payoff of like, it was all a dream, but Bogo does also have the app and is, you know, happy to be told he's a good dancer kind of thing from Gazelle. And then lastly, we get Dinner Rush. And this, I guess there's another one like Duke the Musical, I think we're probably more apart on because...
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a lot of like, I don't like the sloth humor as long as it is. I like it as like a short one beat kind of thing, but turning that into a full like, this is the whole joke and that's all it's going to be, and we're just going to do that for 8 minutes, is like, I'm very much the character of like, I get it, I know exactly where this is going, I'm ready to be done with this. I'm ready to be done with this, move on to the next thing. So yeah, it's much more of a miss than a hit, just in my like humor sensibility. Like, I still appreciate it, and I still like, I think the best moment in it for me is when he finally makes the proposal and she says no, and he responds before she can get out, way yes. Like, I thought like that was a fun the tables have turned kind of moment. But I could have also done with the whole rest of it being 3 minutes shorter and would not have felt like I was missing out on anything.
I liked it. I love the sloth humor in Zootopia. It's one of my favorite scenes from that movie, is them at the bank, which I think is like, to your point,
the
like
DMV.
is like perfectly, at the DMV, like perfectly done, like in terms of its timing and pacing. I like there's like the nice payoff, obviously at the end of it, of like getting obviously the two main characters back in here. I like the idea of like him being like a speed demon on the road, I think is really funny.
Which, again, is a like that, I believe, is the post-credits scene from the original movie, is him racing through and Judy and Nick like catching him and flash, you son of a gun, or whatever he says, flash, 100-yard dash, whatever
that's what it is. And so like I like that. Like, I do like the idea of like, she was leaving to go to this concert at like 6 p.m. And then they leave, and it's like clearly the middle of the day in the city. It is like not nighttime at all. And I did catch that. I was like, that's a weird, but easier to animate the day than the night, probably.
Well, again, they were also locked into the animation that they already had from the movie to say, here's where this ties into the original movie. And this whole thing of them saying, they were going to a Gazelle concert is the like, it's the reason for this, but it was all completely made up after the fact. So yeah,
I do also love it just as someone who's like done like food service stuff. Just the audacity that there'd be one waiter or waitress in the entire restaurant was also pretty good. I did enjoy that, but I did like the bits of like, you know, the like rats are in like inside of a tree, right, for them, and like the giraffes are like giant up high, you get into them, and like I thought all of that was like really cool, actually. And again, another really great example of like the cleverness of the design of Zootopia and how like it works as a thing. Because I think, if nothing else, I think Zootopia is one of the smartest animated movies in a long time, just in terms of the level of detail it gives like everything you're seeing. Like, there was some sort of thought behind like, what would these animals do? How would they interact in this like society or community and that kind of thing? And this is an episode, I think, that does that in a really cool way too. And so I liked that. Is it predictable? Sure. Is it one note? Yeah, fine. But that one note largely worked for me the entire time. And just like the visual gag of like, once the two of them are seated and she's in the middle, the camera really doesn't leave them ever again. It's just her coming out of frame and then back in, her coming out of frame, back in. And like, I thought that was really funny. It was all like paced well for me in terms of like when they had their pauses for her to leave and then said something again to like her to come back. And so I really enjoyed it. It had a really funny moment too of, you know, her running around the restaurant, getting everyone's orders wrong, and then coming back and him being like, and that's the whole order. And her just being like, yeah. So I liked it. It was probably, again, like I said, probably my second favorite one, maybe a third favorite one. Of the six. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we kind of ran through pretty much all of them. So yeah, it was definitely a fun little experimentation thing. I think I would have been more interested if this had been a little bit more divorced from the movie. Like, if it wasn't trying to show, here's a moment from the movie for each of these characters expanded.
I didn't need that. Yeah.
Yeah, like I
didn't need that.
Like I think the Godfather one works as well as it does because it is so largely detached. It's very loosely in the, we see the little moment from the movie of him giving the speech kind of thing, but so much of it is just like him telling this story from the past versus like this, the sloth one that is tying into the post credits thing, or the hop on board thing tying into
the first and the last
first
are the
one,
worst. I think at that, I'm just like, this whole episode is sort of like you said, like is to a degree like centered around get into this bit. And I didn't need either one of them. I didn't need Judy or Nick in this at all.
Yeah.
And I'd have been totally fine. Like if it had just been like, here are 6 random characters' stories, I'd have found that way more interesting. Especially because in both instances where like you get like main characters in here, it's just sort of like, oh, they're just sort of here to have them here. Like it doesn't really, there's no point in them being here anyway. So I'll agree to that for sure.
Yeah. All right. Let's go ahead and give it our report card. It's grade from A+ to F. What do you want to give Zootopia Plus here, Logan?
I will give Zootopia Plus a right. Like I look back at those other animated shows. Like I didn't watch the Baymax ones. I can't comment on that. But I did watch Tales of the Jedi, and I feel like I gave Tales of the Jedi a B, right? Because I think I said like the Dooku stuff was a C. No, I have it backwards.
Yeah, Dooku was an A, and Ahsoka was a C. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I give that a B. I think I enjoyed that better than this. I didn't hate this by any means. It's uneven, which I think is part of its issue. So I would give this like a C, probably overall. Maybe a C plus. Like I enjoyed this, right? And like I think that Godfather one's great. I really do. I think it's like really super clever, and like that alone is like enough to like elevate that to like a C plus for me, probably.
Yeah.
And yeah, like in the like Disney Plus shorts, like animated things like you kind of talked about, it's not Tales of the Jedi. I don't need to watch the Cars one to know it's better than that. So like a C sort of feels fitting, right?
Yeah. I think probably pretty much in the same boat. Like I would say the Godfather one, easy A, but everything else is like just not at that level. Yeah. And so yeah, C plus, probably a good like overall thing. But then like, yeah, let's set aside the Godfather one and say that's an A, and then everything else is a C plus kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right. Extra credit, other suggestions if you like this. You have the original Zootopia film, of course.
Go watch it.
Encanto, you have Raya and the Last Dragon, Olaf Presents, Big Hero 6, Frozen, Moana, and Short Circuit. Not that one.
What a weird collection of things.
Indeed.
Also, like, what a weird run of like Pixar and Disney stuff we're in right now. Like,
yeah,
Encanto, Raya, Moana.
Yep. Well, I mean, all of those are just Disney. Like none of the things on this list are Pixar except for the Short Circuit stuff, and even Short Circuit is actually I think more Walt Disney animation. Short Circuit, this one, not the Short Circuit from the 80s or whatever,
80s.
Is a series of experimental short animated films from Walt Disney Animation Studios, and the premise is basically like anybody at Disney can pitch an animated short or like pitch an animated story, and if their pitch wins, Disney Animation makes it, and they're 7-minute-esque shorts kind of thing. The things you would typically see before a Disney movie in a theater and stuff like that. So that's one. It's definitely one that I should probably like look at for a future That D Plus show, because I think it's a cool little premise, and yeah, it's a very
we did a whole episode on like the old school ones. So
exactly.
Yeah, I'm sure
but yeah, so I think the extra credit there is largely just driven from like, here are the recent Disney animated studios properties that aren't Pixar stuff. Because like Olaf Presents is I believe I think that's the one that they came out with a couple years ago. That's basically like Olaf telling Disney movies, like telling the story of Disney movies, like he does the little like Frozen 1 recap in Frozen
Lion
2.
King 1.5, right? Yeah, that kind of vibe.
Yeah. Extracurriculars. You watching anything else on Disney Plus these days?
I don't think so. At some point in time, we'll do the season recap, maybe of National Treasure. At which point, I'll finish watching that.
You'll catch up, yeah.
But otherwise, I don't think so right now. We're sort of in like a fallow period a little bit for
Yeah,
TV.
it's definitely been a pretty quiet in terms of like new things coming to Disney Plus. I'm catching. I have not watched this week's Bad Batch or National Treasure: Edge of History yet, but I am otherwise caught up on both those shows.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm basically one episode behind on both of those, and those are basically just like. They're the like, oh, I usually watch them on Wednesday. Yesterday, Cam and I watched Never After, which is a Dimension 20 actual play D&D kind of series. And then I just didn't. I've been playing Persona 3 Portable, so haven't been watching as much as I, am when I'm not spending a bunch of time playing a Persona game.
Sure.
But I'm sure I
You
will
don't need to complain
catch
to me
up on
about
that.
playing old video games again.
Yeah.
I went back and was, finishing getting all the Riddler trophies in Arkham Asylum, and I'm playing a GoldenEye remake from 12 years ago. So I get it. You know what I mean? It's just, again, we're in that time of year where like nothing's really coming out in terms of like movies, games, or TV shows really. So it's like, yeah, you just start chipping away at other stuff.
Indeed. All right. Well, that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, Logan, for joining me to talk about Zootopia Plus here. You can follow Logan at Lefty Logie, Loggy. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Logan?
I'm going to give a shout out to That Nerdy Site Show. We've done a lot of good kind of year-end recap stuff for 2022. We talked we haven't actually talked about our favorite games of the year yet, I think. I don't think we've done the podcast yet.
Right.
But we did talk about our favorite movies of the year, which is a lot of fun. And I'll have a written piece on my 10 or so movies probably coming next week. Trevor and Cameron, I don't think anyone's joined on that one, had a conversation around like their favorite non-movies or game stuff.
Yep.
And I agree largely with the list. Again, shout out to Miss Marvel, always. She-Hulk, also great. Andor, phenomenal. It was a really good year for TV, and a really great year for movies, and a good year for games as well. So 2022, shout out to that. So go check out all of those kind of shows and some of the last ones we've got left to come in terms of those wrap-ups.
Cool. Yeah. You follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I will echo those. And yeah, this week, so we've been pushing our game of the year conversation because Frank had some family personal stuff kind of got in the way that he is, but he should be back this week. So we'll be able to have me, Frank, and Cameron sit down, talk game of the year stuff for 2022. And then also I will shout out the current Elden Ring series that is Cameron helping carry me through Elden Ring. We've made it, I think, 4 episodes as of as of today, 4 episodes through Elden Ring. We've got a couple more in the can. So I haven't rage quit yet.
I was going to say, no broken controllers yet.
Yep. It came close. I think I say in one of the videos coming up of like, I just really want to take this controller and throw it at the wall over there. And a ring just came flying off my hand. So that's, if there was a noise there, that's what that was. But yes, Elden Ring, Cameron been kind of carrying me through that on our Tuesday and Thursday Let's Plays the last couple weeks. So you can find those over on youtube.com/thatnerdysite. You can follow all the latest from us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com. And that's where you will also see, some of our kind of best of 2022 wrap-ups, be it movies. I started writing a while back and I still need to finish like my favorite platinum trophies of 2022, which is a series I've been doing the last few years. And then, all of our other kind of best of write-ups. But yeah, if you liked all that, please remember to like, rate, subscribe, review, share the podcast with your friends, ring bells, all that stuff that you do on any of the things you're doing it on. All that generic call to action stuff here at the end of a podcast or YouTube video or whatever. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, and class dismissed.